would like to come up and please start again, we'll continue with the forum here.
Thank you. I got to do this over again. It's not scripted, so I'll just wing it again. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Treaty 6 land for the Dene people and the Cree people and the Métis Nation. So, aye for them. So, thanks everybody. My name is Sean McDonald. I'm the PPC candidate for this riding in Fort McMurray-Cold Lake. And I want to also acknowledge the candidates behind me in that. It takes a lot of guts to do what they're doing, what we're doing, I guess, so I want to acknowledge that. And also want to acknowledge the ones that are not here. And to me, that speaks volumes in itself. And silence, as they say, is silent but deadly. So I want to acknowledge that as well. So I was born and raised on the Kikino Métis settlement quite a few years back. And I come from pretty humble beginnings there, without power and water and that. And back then, my dad got a job in the mid-70s, showing my age again, mid-70s, with oil and gas up in Bechtel Lake, north of McMurray. And he helped build quite a few of the facilities up there. So I can see the uprising of people coming out of poverty, including our family, with oil and gas. So it's very near and dear to me, and same with the economy, of course. I started my business, blacksmithing contracting, back in 1997. It'll be 25 years old next year, and that's again strictly oil and gas. And we had, on the good moments, quite a few employees and equipment and that, but we've downsized considerably and had a lot of layoffs since then. And back in 2009, I helped form ROBA, the Region 1 Aboriginal Business Association. And that was just to kind of build a bridge between industry and the lack of support for the Indigenous and non-Indigenous businesses in northeastern Alberta. And I also sit on the national board of the IRN, the Indigenous Resource Network, once again to help build bridges again between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people and industries all around the nation. And why my calling for this is to step up and be a candidate with the PPC is the platform is very dear and near to my values and morals as a person, as a businessman. And by no means am I a politician. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I'm willing to learn and step up and do it for the people of this riding and for our province and country. I find our country is going downhill very fast. We're losing our freedoms. We're being forced to do things that we should not be forced by any government. It should be freedom of speech, or freedom to choose what we want, and not the government to put that on us. It's not that I don't believe in certain things or don't think it's real or whatever, and don't think we're affected, but it shouldn't be the government's decision to force us to do so. And so that's pretty well the platform there, and but Indigenous platform itself too. I believe in fighting for all people's rights, not only my Indigenous people, but all the people of Canada. And I want to be there for everybody, no matter where you are in the riding, no matter what you do, who you are, what color your skin is, or whatever it is. We all need to stick together and remain united and not divided with the current policies and stuff that are in place with the existing federal government. To me, that's the way we should be and not separate the province. I don't believe in separatism. I believe in uniting the country, not separating us. So yes, thank you very much for hearing me out, and we'll hand it over to the next one. Thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome up Mr. Garnett Robinson, member of the NDP.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Garnett Robinson. I'm running for the New Democratic Party of Canada, and I'm sorry my voice does not project well. I've had a recent throat issue, so I'd of course like to thank the members of the Chamber of Commerce, all of them, who hosted the event, and of course everybody else who's taking part. I suspect a relative newcomer in the room. I came out here as recently, well, when I first came out here was 1985. Planned to be here for 5 years, and I decided to stay here. My wife and I have lived in Lac-La-Biche for those years, except for about 3.5 years when I lived in Calgary and Edmonton when I was working, but coming back every weekend. We have 2 children, one who lives in Edmonton and another who lives in Kikino. And my 2 grandchildren love going to school in Kikino. I came out in 1985 to work as a child and youth care for the Alberta government, and I did up until last month when I retired. During that time I was working with 12 to 17-year-olds, so they taught me to think on my feet and to be responsive to immediate needs. I was also very involved with my union, the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees. I represented workers at my worksite and across the province. I held various positions. I was a vice president, I was a chairperson of a major local in the union. In doing that, I was involved with joint union management committees, I spearheaded worker concerns, and often had success in changing management positions. Aside from that, in my 36 years here, I've become very familiar with the issues of living in northern Alberta, particularly in a small rural community. In our communities, we have high prices for consumables and housing, high costs for internet and cell service, along with poor service, particularly along the rural and highway areas. Dropping cell service is a common occurrence. In this region, in this riding, we have treaties 6, 8, and of course the Métis and Métis settlements and communities in each. So that's a big issue. Reconciliation is extremely important. We have concerns about balancing the environmental issues with jobs. I believe we can have good jobs and a clean environment, but they're not mutually exclusive. We constantly have to fight to get services that are common in cities. In Lac La Biche, the community had to fight to get needed hospital services like dialysis and a CAT scan, which we have both of now, but it was a major fight. We shouldn't have to be fighting for needed services. Those should be based on need and not about trying to save money. We always see the effects of people living in poverty, and that has to be fixed. Universal basic income could replace the multitude of programs people have to go through in order to have their needs met. We see too many people unable to take part in post-secondary education or ending up with huge debt that takes decades to pay off. Education should not be reserved only for the wealthy. The NDP has plans to forgive student loan interest, and I believe we could and should go further. We see the effects of people being unable to afford needed medication, and universal pharmacare is the solution. We see the effects of illegal drugs, which resulting in the addiction and death of users. Addiction is not a moral failure of the user, and addiction is not cured by criminalization or platitudes like just say no. Often the negative effects of addiction can be improved by providing safe drugs and safe places to use the drugs. The real overall solution is most frequently providing the user with a community where they're accepted and where they feel valued members of a community. In my 36 years, I've seen successive liberal and conservative federal governments promise to fix these issues and then do nothing. We've also seen this area elect successive versions of conservative members of Parliament who promise to be our voice in Parliament, again with little success. It's time the voters in Fort McMurray-Cold Lake vote for a New Democrat candidate. New Democrats have a history of getting governments to listen to their concerns and to make adjustments to their program. We, of course, started with Medicare, EI, CPP. Those were all NDP things. And of course, more recently, the NDP managed to increase the CERB benefits and increase eligibility. I invite, in this election, I invite voters to vote for the NDP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. We now invite Huey Whitmore from the Veterans Coalition Party.
Good evening, people. My name is Huey Shane Whitmore. I'm running for the Veterans Coalition Party of Canada. My personal thing is I'm used to be the Vice President of the Carpenters Union down in Calgary. I was also on the Regional Council for 9 years. And I kind of know what politicians and politics is all about. It's still going to be a learning lesson for me. Myself, I'd like to cut the wages of politicians by 30% right off the hop. I'd also like to get rid of their golden parachute and make them work just like the rest of Canadians that have 20 years to get a pension. Myself, I believe in equal rights for everybody. I don't see color because I'm Métis myself. Everybody to me is equal because everybody puts their pants on legs first. I don't know anything else I can say, but I'm a person that's a construction worker, I'm a tradesman. I want to bring common sense to politics in Ottawa, and I'd really like to bring the opinions of the working class to the Parliament building to make them understand where we're all standing from and where we're struggling from paycheck to paycheck to raise our families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. We now ask Mr. Jonathan Myers from the Maverick Party.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Myers. I am the Maverick Party candidate for Fort McMurray-Cold Lake. I've actually noticed my speech is a lot different than the ones that have gone before mine, so to get more of my personal bio, I would suggest going to the website. But here goes. The Mongol Empire was the largest land empire the world has ever known. Mongols traveled all over hell to fight everybody. The Mongols' success was that they could ride more than 50 miles a day through vast tracts of empty wilderness and desert where nothing else could survive. They lived off their horses by slitting a non-lethal vein, and drinking some blood, just enough to keep the horse alive. This same thing is happening today. For more than 6 decades, the Ontario and Quebec-centered federal parties have ridden on the backs of Western Canadian provinces, putting a yoke on our necks and slowly sucking the lifeblood from our economy, to the tune of $600 billion. The federal parties, who refuse to support our pipelines to the east, have imported $81.1 billion worth of oil in the past 6 years from countries with poor environmental and human rights standards to fuel Eastern industries. The same federal parties come around every election promising us change, but have never delivered. Yet, again and again, we give them our votes. You will hear from candidates representing these Eastern parties who would voice your concerns in party caucus meetings in Ottawa, but in the end, their vote will be dictated to them by their party leaders. Just ask Jody Wilson-Raybould, or recently here, when the current CPC candidate for this riding was appointed by Aaron O'Toole against the wishes of the local EDA, bypassing the normal democratic process. To benefit the East, to hell with the West. For the first time, you have a Western Canadian option. We are the only Western party. You can now choose a representative who is free to vote for your interests. So far in this election campaign, promises costing in the billions are being bandied about. The common theme among all these parties is more spending. More and more of your tax dollars will be required to pay for this pie-in-the-sky promises. Already today, every Canadian man, woman, and child is on the hook for $57,500 in government debt. The interest payments alone will cost Canada $38 billion this year. This is money that could be spent on badly needed health care and social services for our Canadian families. Canada is underwater in debt. and sinking faster every time we elect these eastern parties and politicians. Friends, lend your vote to the Maverick Party, the only Western Canadian party based in Calgary, Alberta, that has a constitution that will protect your vote. We will fight tirelessly to rescind the current equalization formula. Western Canada has only 6 decades of non-renewable energy deposits left before they're all gone. So we cannot afford to give away another $600 billion to the east. If we could keep our own money, we would not need any of these pie-in-the-sky ideas, promises, and associated debt that the Conservatives and the Liberals and the NDP and the Greens and the People's Party and all the Eastern parties are trying to sell us. Vote Maverick and say no to funding Eastern interests. We intend to push our Energy East corridor and pipeline agenda, to scrap the carbon tax, to work with Indigenous peoples in this great region that we call home. Western Canada deserves the same recognition that Quebec gets in Confederation. Western Canada needs constitutional changes to achieve equality. So cast your vote for me. I am Jonathan Myers, Maverick Party. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. We now invite Brian to hear from the Green Party of Canada.
Thank you. Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian DeHeer. I'm the candidate for the Green Party of Canada. Thank you to the organizers for organizing this event. Lac La Biche is well represented in this particular election. 3 of us are from Lac La Biche. That's also where I live. And I appreciate the land acknowledgement. We are in Treaty 6 territory. Lac La Biche, of course, is close to the overlap with Treaty 8 traditional lands, and also that we're in Métis Nation Region 1. I want to just tell people a little bit about myself and why I'm running. I am a musician, I'm a music instructor, and I'm sort of well known in Lac La Biche, partly because I also play in a band. I've taught music lessons to youth and adults for quite a few years. I have to think how many years now. It's at least a decade. I'm looking to the audience. Somebody there has had some kids with lessons with me. It's been a number of years, anyways. I've also been a Green Party of Canada candidate a number of times before. This is my 4th time running in this riding. It didn't always used to be Fort McMurray-Cold Lake. The first time I ran, I think it was still Fort McMurray-Athabasca. I believe the last 3 times it's been Fort McMurray-Cold Lake. I've been a supporter of the Green Party for over 10 years. I'm also involved with the provincial Green Party, and I've run as a provincial candidate 3 times as well. Some people in Cold Lake area might also know me because I did work at Portage College for about 14 years. It was a very enjoyable part of my career, and it was when I left that was when I started doing my music lessons full time. I've also been very much involved in various nonprofit groups. Some of them are in the area in Lac La Biche, and some of them are regional. In Lac La Biche, there's a watershed stewardship group called Healthy Waters Lac La Biche that's doing some very exciting things for watershed stewardship. I've also been a member of Keepers of the Water, which is an Indigenous and settler partnership group working at watershed and Indigenous issues, and also been involved with some of the watershed planning and advisory councils in Alberta, WPACs as they're often referred to, and that includes both the Athabasca Watershed Council and the local one here, LICA. In addition to that, I've been a member of the board for the Alberta Environmental Network, and a very enthusiastic supporter and volunteer for our local ski club, the Lac La Biche Nordic Ski Club. And really the main reason why I'm running is to give voters an opportunity to vote for the Green Party. If there's no Green candidate on the ballot, then people don't have that option. I think the Green Party has a lot to offer. It's often characterized as being a one-issue party, all about the environment, and of course, everything is seen through a lens that takes the environment into account, but it also, I feel, has very strong social justice policies and good policies on the economy. We're running a very low-budget campaign. I can't remember what the spending limit is, folks, for our campaigns, but I'm about 99% short of that. So if anybody wants to make a donation, it's certainly welcome. I also want to say I certainly respect and appreciate the service from our men and women in the Canadian Armed Forces, and I also value our emergency responders and our health and safety workers. I think those folks especially deserve our support, and I appreciate the contribution that they make to providing health and safety to all of our lives. So I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeHeer. Now we will go on to some questions. This question is presented from a member to all candidates. What are you going to do about the exploding tax burden of small business owners compared to that of the online world? Example, small businesses pay employee taxes, fuel taxes, utility taxes, property and city taxes, municipal and provincial federal taxes, and many more to support our economy, government, and society in general. Much of the online world, especially large corporations, gets tax breaks and handouts and pays little or no taxes in our cities, provinces, and our country. So given the current national debt and its imminent impact on Canadian quality of life, what are you and your party going to do about this unfair tax burden to small business owners and their families? And I'll invite Mr. DeHeer first to come up, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I was afraid of that. I was the last person in the previous round, so I'm the first person up in this round. All I can say in response to this question, without having a little bit of time to collect my thoughts, is I have always valued small business. I feel that I'm a small business person myself, teaching music lessons. In my previous campaigns, I've always spoken very strongly in support of small business. I feel that they are the foundation of our local economies. Often when times get hard and large corporations are laying people off, a lot of times that's where the jobs are created, is with small business. So I can tell you that there are some excellent planks in the Green Party's platform that just came out the day before yesterday. I haven't read through them in detail, so I can't rattle them off by heart right now. But certainly I would be a strong advocate for small business. Thanks.
Thank you. I would like to now invite Mr. Myers from the Maverick Party to respond.
Yeah, thank you. I believe small business is the backbone of our economy, and Maverick Party would support a freedom for small businesses to run their businesses as they see fit. I think an important step to help small businesses, especially in the West, would be to scrap the carbon tax, which would immediately reduce the cost of doing business for small businesses. Whether small businesses are involved with shipping or receiving any goods that are shipped to their warehouses or stores, heating their buildings, which is one cost that online companies don't have to worry about as much. And all of these, every one of these categories of expenses for small business are greatly affected and increased by the carbon tax. Also, I think that we would push for balanced budgets and lower taxes all around. And this, I think, would help greatly with small businesses who are increasingly having to compete in a high stakes, high competitive market with these online companies. These online companies are not going away. But I think we can balance the budgets and decrease the taxes to try to make the playing field a little more level and give the small businesses a chance to make it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. I'd now like to invite Mr. Whitmore from BCP to respond.
Well, taxation. In reality, the way, I'm no mathematician, but I've calculated out the cost of taxes to the Canadian people and small business. It works out to, in my calculation, to about 68.3% of your gross income goes to some form of tax in this country. Now, that leaves you with 31.7% of your gross income to live on. Now, you can't tax a country into wealth. And that's exactly what the governments that we have right now and for the last 60 plus years have been trying to do, is tax us into wealth. We're taking all the money out of the working class citizens. If you look at it, if you're paying taxes, when you're working, you're paying the government to have that job. And that to me is not right. It's no different than my union. My union charges me a fixed amount of 2.25% of my gross income is charged when I get paid. That's paying for the job, paying for dispatch, and we're doing the same thing with the government. We're paying to have that job. For a small business to pay taxes, it's the same thing. They're paying to be able to do business, and that is not right. So we have to work on that and try and take the cost of taxes, and like the Maverick Party said, get rid of that carbon tax. That carbon tax is killing this country faster than anything else. So that's what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I'd like to invite now Garnett Robinson from the NDP to respond.
Okay, thank you very much. What to do about the tax load for small business? Well, the NDP have a position, which is that the tax rates that big business and the ultra-rich pay are way too low, and they need to pay not a whole much more, they need to pay a bit more. But one of the real problems, and that kind of came up in the question, is that small businesses are competing with offshore businesses that do not pay tax. So if you remember a few years back, there was a real concern about a Netflix tax, right? Ooh, this party's going to put in a Netflix tax. Well, all they were doing was talking about taxing a company that doesn't currently pay taxes. And that's a real problem here, because now if you want to do any sort of business in Alberta, as was pointed out, you have to pay the local taxes, you have to pay all of that. Amazon and those companies, they don't. They're not paying GST, they're not paying any of those taxes. And it's time that those companies pay their fair share of taxes. There's a taxation problem, but it needs to be fixed so that people pay the appropriate amount of taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I'd like to now invite a member of the PBC, Sean McDonald, to respond.
Thank you. My answer for the taxes for the small businesses, of course, I just announced that I am a small business owner of 25 years, president of a business association with many small businesses on it. So to me, the economy will not survive without small businesses. And the existing lockdowns that are in place are killing the small businesses, so it's almost like it's intentional, but it's really, really killing us. I did an interview with CNN London when Biden got in and canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. And I kind of compared to that, and I told them, well, the federal government, they preach shop local, but yet we spend billions of dollars a year on Saudi Arabia oil and other countries like that, instead of supporting our own businesses here by producing Alberta oil and Canadian oil. To me, that itself, if you want reconciliation with the Aboriginal people, and even the non-Aboriginal people, put us to work, build the Energy East pipeline, kill the carbon tax. As a small business owner, carbon tax, with a fleet of trucks, it just kills you. A couple cents increase in fuel, it makes or breaks a small business like myself. So yeah, you got to support local and build the pipelines for one thing, and create more jobs and lower the taxes for the smaller businesses. And as far as shopping online and stuff like that, again, it comes down to supporting local. Buy something made in Canada, if not even in the USA. Made in China, they don't pay the taxes that we do. So you're getting it cheaper, obviously, but they can sell it cheaper, and there's no competition for us, and we cannot compete with prices like that because of the low price they pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Our next question comes from another community member. As our Member of Parliament, how would you ensure more infrastructure dollars come into the riding? This is for all candidates, and I'd like to welcome up PPC candidate Sean McDonald to respond first.
Sorry, can you restate the question?
Yes. As a Member of Parliament, how would you ensure more infrastructure dollars come into the riding?
Exactly what I just spoke about. More infrastructure means more taxes, but we've got to create more jobs and more oil and gas infrastructure and other industries as well, and create jobs. And that's how we bring it, not again by importing oil and other material from other countries to do so. Support local, more jobs, a healthier economy, and lower the taxes, and get rid of the carbon tax. That's how we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I'd like to invite Mr. Robinson, NDP, to respond.
Increasing infrastructure dollars into the region, that is something that I have been fighting for through the union and with the employer for many, many years. You have to get out there and you have to prove that there's a need for the infrastructure to occur. You have to demonstrate that the project is valuable, and you have to get out there and you just have to fight. You just have to be tenacious, and you just have to keep doing it. And again, that's what I've been doing for 35 years. So I'm very familiar with working with the various levels of government and government itself to ensure that things actually happen.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I now invite Mr. Whitmore, VCP, to respond.
Can you repeat the question, please?
As our Member of Parliament, how would you ensure more infrastructure dollars come into the riding?
Okay. Well, in my personal opinion, what our oil and gas in this province needs is more refineries. Right now, we're making the oil and bringing it out of the ground, and we have to pipe it to the United States, and we have to sell it for $20 less than the actual price worldwide, the world market price. Now, if we built more refineries up here, we could refine it into sweet oil. We could also refine it down into the gasoline and diesel that we all use. And it would bring the prices down for us in this country. And it would also, if it was a sweet oil, they would have less complaints about bringing it out to the East Coast to refine it in the refineries in Irving. Irving is, their biggest thing is how dirty our oil is right now, and that's the coke dust that's still left in it. If we refined that out of there, we could sell sweet crude like everybody else at world market price. If we built 3 refineries in this province, that's 33,000 jobs for 10 years to build it. And then you're looking at anywhere up to 5,000 maintenance jobs per plant for the life of the plant, and that's 40 to 50 years. think of the tax dollars that we could take down out of that to run this country, and how we could be able to reduce the taxes that is coming out of everybody's pockets. And the infrastructure would come from that, building those in itself, because you need all sorts of support to build these places. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I'd now like to invite Mr. Myers from the Maverick Party to respond.
Thank you. Infrastructure in Fort McMurray-Cold Lake is it's an important question. Because of our industry, we need our roads. We need access to remote locations. My feeling on it is that if we can reduce taxes, scrap the carbon tax, allow our businesses to thrive and build and invest and get pipelines to bring our energy to market, roads would become necessary. As we explore in the northern parts of our riding, I would love to see a highway from Fort McMurray to Grand Prairie. Why not? Why not cut 6 hours off the route, right? I would also push strongly, if I were to go to Ottawa, to see year-round road access to Fort Chippewa, a secluded community that only has a road in the wintertime. These are important things that we need, that I think can be achieved by allowing the market and industry to build and grow, and thereby causing the demand for infrastructure to increase. As my NDP compatriot there said, if there's a need, you lobby for it, it happens. So I think we need to see industry growing, so there is a need for more infrastructure, and then we will get more infrastructure. Aside from that, I also want to reiterate that I will push to see a year-round road access for Fort Chippewa. It's a promise I made to some Fort Chippewa folks the other day, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Nahir from the Green Party of Canada to respond.
Thank you for the question. There are a number of types of infrastructure that come to mind that I would push very strongly for dollars for this Fort McMurray-Cold Lake riding. Coming from my watershed stewardship background, one of the primary focuses of the Water for Life strategy in Alberta is clean, safe drinking water for all communities. And I know that there continue to be boil water advisories for some of our Indigenous communities, First Nations. And I know lots of cities, towns, and Lac La Biche has an excellent water and sewer system. I believe Wood Buffalo does, and probably so does Cold Lake. But for smaller communities, rural communities, acreages or farm properties, or especially Indigenous communities, I would be pushing for having sufficient dollars for infrastructure so that more people have safe, clean drinking water. We should not be having any more need for any boil water advisories, and especially if that is predominantly in Indigenous communities, that is extremely discriminatory and needs to be addressed, needs to be corrected. I know that another area that I'm aware of is municipalities often are very short for funds for infrastructure. I try to attend as many of the Lac La Biche County Council meetings as I can, and they have often spoken about needing infrastructure dollars. Is that time or is that 10 seconds? Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nahir. Our next question comes from our Facebook Live forum from Janet Stonehouse Huffman. Canadian parents, including those in Fort McMurray and northern Alberta, have long struggled to find affordable, high-quality childcare spaces. A contributing factor to this is the lack of qualified early childhood educators working in the childcare sector. What is your party's plan developing a strong ECE workforce that can provide affordable and quality care? And now I'd like to invite Mr. DeHeer from the Green Party of Canada to respond.
Thanks again. I'm going to have to be ready for that from now on. So again, I'm going to have to answer this off the top of my head without really too much time to collect my thoughts. As I mentioned, I'm a music instructor. This afternoon before coming here, I was teaching at Wandering River School, so an hour in the opposite direction for Lac-La-Biche. But I mentioned that just to demonstrate that I do teach on a contract basis in that school, so I'm involved in the school systems, and I see the work that teachers do, and I absolutely recognize the value and importance of teachers and good education. And in your question here, early childhood education is focused not so much on the K to 12, but the kids that are younger than grade 1. And I know that that's an issue. So I don't know the details on our party's platform on that, but I am certainly aware of the need for that and the importance of it. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to invite Mr. Myers from the Maverick Party to respond.
Maverick Party will advocate for greater provincial autonomy by giving back to the provinces their rightful powers, which should include childcare and a number of other issues. So we believe that childcare should be governed more closely by the provinces themselves. And so we would advocate for that. Having said that, the Maverick Party, we strongly, what's the word I'm looking for? The Maverick Party endorses the notion that parents should be given a choice in the child care that they wish to have. So we are opposed to a federal child care program. We think the closer the control over child care comes to the parents, the better. And so we would advocate for that. And I think to answer the question specifically of how we can entice early child care workers into the market, I think is the same market forces that cause anything to grow. And that is as demand increases, the supply will increase. And so I think giving parents a choice to where they want to spend their child care dollars and where they want to send them will incentivize more people to join that industry, or that calling. So yeah, that is our plan.
Now I'd invite Mr. Whitmore from VCP to respond.
Well, I know what I had to do when I was raising 3 kids by myself. And I was paying, for 2 of them going to daycare, I was paying $735 a month. And I'll tell you, that really kicked the pants off me and my wallet. It made it so that some nights my kids got to eat and I didn't, because I had to make sure that they had proper education, proper schooling, and in a safe area. And it was expensive, but it was well worth it. Now, to me, I would have really liked the government not to take that money out of my pocket in the first place. Because when they take the tax dollars out of your pocket, they give it to a committee. The committee hires somebody to hand out checks later. So by the time you get it back, it's only 50% of what you sent in. So why not leave that money in the parents' pockets and set up the school system so that we can educate more people to take on these jobs that are needed in daycares. That is the bottom line. We need to be able to support them and get them involved. And instead of taking more money out of their pocket to take them to go to school to get the course, we offer the course at a discount rate for the person who's willing to go to that school to take those courses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Now let's invite Mr. Robinson, member of the NDP, to respond.
This is a concern that's near and dear to my heart. As I said, I raised 2 children in this area, and it was extremely difficult to find good quality daycare. You could find people who were willing to watch your children along with 10 other children. You know, that's not good quality daycare. I was actually, one of my daughters went through the Blackledge daycare program, and I was the chairperson of the board there. And one of the things that I was extremely disturbed at is that we were paying pennies more than minimum wage to daycare workers. That's just wrong. Okay? We actually had some really good daycare workers. They were, because I was at the college, they had the education, but you couldn't keep them because why would they stay when they're being paid a pittance? It's just wrong. So we did what we could to raise the rates so that another board member and I were actually the only ones who were actually paying out of pocket because of the subsidy program at the time. Everybody else, the other 70 parents or something, didn't have to pay anything. We paid more so that our workers could get more. And I think I believe we need to do more to provide proper training, proper standards, and proper pay for daycare. We can't be subjecting our young children to just anybody off the street who wants to make a few bucks making money off of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I'd now like to invite Mr. McDonald, member of the PPC, to respond.
Children are our greatest resources that we have. They are our future. And many compare Quebec with their childcare and that. And it's so much better than what we have in Alberta, is what I'm told, and I agree. But that comes down to, believe it or not, the equalization payments. It's totally unfair, the provincial welfare system that we have out there. So we've got to make that more fair so we can lower our taxes and not support them when they in turn are not supporting us. My wife works in the education system, so it's very near and dear to me. And we're overcrowded, and we definitely got to start with educating the children younger and that, and lighten the loads in the classrooms. And by doing that, that costs money. So instead of giving money to somebody that doesn't support us, I think we should cut back on the equalization payments and lower taxes so we can hire more people to help our youth, especially preschool. Thank you.
Our next question comes from our online forum from Tiffany Levicia. What is your party's stance on universal basic income? And do you feel UBI leads to Canada being a socialist country? I'd like to invite Mr. McDonald from the PBC to respond first.
One more time on that question.
Yeah. What is your party's stance on universal basic income? And do you feel universal basic income leads to Canada being a socialist country? Sorry.
Yes, I do agree with that. The way things are going right now, we're heading towards socialism. To me, that's not fair for somebody that wants to sit on the couch all day and play video games would make the same as somebody that wants to actually get off their butt and work for it. To me, that is not fair. We're definitely going that way with all the hold that the government has on us right now. And again, it comes down to freedom. They're taking our freedoms away. So if we don't choose to vote the right way, this election is one of the most important elections of our time. We're going to lose those freedoms, and we will be a very socialistic country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And now Mr. Robinson, member of the NDP.
The New Democrats are in favor of universal basic income. I'm particularly in favor of universal basic income. What universal basic income will do will help to make things more even, make it more fair across the country. It'll provide people with a basic income so that we can have trickle up instead of trickle down. If we provide income to everybody so they can afford to pay for things, then we can get rid of a whole bunch of social programs. Well, the studies on it show that it reduces crime, it improves health outcomes. There's a number of things that it improves for people, and it's something that we seriously need to adopt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I now invite Mr. Whitmore from the VCP to respond.
Can I get you to repeat that question again, please?
Absolutely. What is your party's stance on universal basic income, and do you feel universal basic income leads to Canada being a socialist country?
As a matter of fact, I do. I'm a very strong believer in the fact that what you need, what you get in life is what you work for. Myself, I started working when I was 8 years old on the farm. And if I wanted anything from the family, I had to go and do my chores every day. I started work at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning to milk the cows, chickens, do everything, you know? And that was just the way it was as I was growing up. And it gave me a work ethic where I don't want things. I got quarantined for 14 days from this from this COVID-19 deal. Okay, I went to work. I was working with a guy that tested positive for it, so I got 14 days at home. It ended up I was 21 days at home. Did I go and ask for a CERB check? No, because all I'm going to have to do is pay it back. You know, so why would I take it from there? It just doesn't add up. But with the basic income, I can understand people want to have a basic amount of money in, but you got to work for that basic income. And by everybody else paying you to sit at home just doesn't cut it. That is socialism at its heart. And I can't condone that. Thank you.
Now, I'd invite Mr. Myers from the Maverick Party to respond.
Yes, I am opposed to the universal basic income, although I am pro-universal basic height. I think that, I do not support that policy. And I do believe that it brings us closer to socialism, as some of my other colleagues have stated quite well. Although, now that I think of it, that universal basic height thing is starting to look pretty good. Although I don't know if I would be given more height or if everyone else would have height taken away, but I do know we would all be the same height. So I'll have to think about that policy a little more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. And now I'd like to invite Mr. DeHere from the Green Party of Canada to respond.
Again, thanks for the question. Yes, I'm happy to say that the Green Party of Canada actually has been a strong advocate for a guaranteed livable income for quite a few years. And the particular benefits that this brings is it leaves no one behind. It gives people choice, dignity, and opportunities. It helps to stimulate the economy. And at this time, we can say it is one of the recommendations from the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls report. So very important. On the point about Canada being a socialist country, I will say I recognize that there are many countries in the world that are social democracies. A lot of the countries in Europe and Japan, Canada is one as well. And that's just an indication that we have a lot of social programs, many of which we hold dear. We have health care, we have pensions, EI, etc. These are benefits that are provided and are very common in social democracies. So I'm not concerned about this being something that is inappropriate in a country such as ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeHere. Our next question. What is your